What's up guys, Gray here. Welcome back to another Destiny 2 video. In today's video, we have an incredible Warlock PvE build to check out. I previously made builds for all my Titans and Hunters out there, and I promised one for my fellow Warlocks as well. This build is mostly centered around big single target DPS for bosses, while using a slew of mods to round out the neutral game of the subclass. As you've come to expect, we're going to break it all down and cover every aspect of this build. But first, if you guys enjoy the video, do me a solid and hit that like button down below. It greatly helps out the channel and pushes the video out to more people. But the best thing you can do to support the channel is to simply watch the video all the way through to the end. Like I did mention, I made build videos for both Titans and Hunters this season, and they've been pretty well received. So stick around because we like to go pretty in-depth around here, and if you find the content helpful, consider subscribing for more videos like this. That's it. That's my plug. Let's get into the video. Now, I know it's taken me a bit longer to put out this Warlock build video as opposed to my previous builds this season, but I had to be absolutely certain that everything I envisioned in my head translated into the game itself. There are a lot of interactions going on with this build, and it will be important to remember what pieces do what job. The focus of this build is going to be a certain Warlock exotic that came into the game recently, and for the most part, really hasn't had a chance to shine that brightly. I'm talking about Dawn Chorus. This is a very interesting exotic that can actually buff your Dawnblade super to do some really big single target damage. It has a long description and there's definitely a lot to unpack with it, so let's get started. Dawn Chorus has the perk Rites of Ember. It states, your Dawnbreak projectiles cause targets to burn on contact and deal more damage to them. All of your burn effects last longer and you gain a small amount of melee energy each time one of your burns damage a target. There are two main things to take away here. Number one being a big buff to burns. They last significantly longer and it restores your melee with each tick on a target, and it really allows for a ton of uptime on your melee, which is going to come into play later on. The second being the overall increase to super damage, which is significant, but there are some things that we have to do to make it work right that the exotic simply doesn't tell us about. This also has to do with some of the weird ways that burns work in general in Destiny 2. To keep it short, the increased damage from your Dawnblade super will not occur unless the target is currently affected by a burn. Luckily, Dawn Chorus does part of that for us, as our super will now apply a burn, but it can take a second before the game recognizes it and actually starts giving us the damage buff. Each Dawnblade projectile will actually ramp up and up and up as you hit the same target, and it's a stacking debuff from Dawn Chorus that is unique to the Dawnblade projectiles. But like I said, it requires that burn to be active in order to start ramping up and dealing those yellow crit numbers that you see. So in order to get the absolute most out of it, what we want to do is actually apply a burn prior to popping our super. Here's where it gets a little strange. Weirdly enough, none of our grenades actually apply a burn to the degree of it working for the damage portion of Dawn Chorus. I am using the solar grenade here, and while it does function to return our melee energy, which means it's technically burning the target, it doesn't give us the damage buff. Super janky here. I'm not sure why it works that way, but it just doesn't count as a full-on burn to give us that Dawnblade buff. However, our melee does. So when possible, we want to melee the target to apply the burn, and then we pop our super and we'll immediately start hitting those yellow numbers right from the start. And it's going to allow us to stack even more damage because every hit is ramping up from the very start. It seems complex, but just remember, burn first, super second. So now that we understand that needlessly convoluted exotic that is Dawn Chorus, we can focus on the rest of the build and the subclass. We want to stick with bottom tree Dawnblade for this build for the reasons mentioned moments ago. We need that burn effect from our melee to get the most out of our super. Top tree Celestial Fire doesn't cause a burn, and while middle tree does technically apply a burn, we obviously don't have access to Dawnblade with Well of Radiance. Unfortunately, bottom tree Dawn is not the most well-rounded subclass in the game. It is mostly centered around the super itself, and while we can extend the duration of the super by perhaps getting an extra kill from the AoE portion of the super, there's really not much else going on here. Luckily, we can use plenty of mods and weapons to round out the neutral side of the subclass, and we still have a big game changer coming so stick around to see how we take this to the next level. Now let's talk about our armor mods first. These will give us much more ad slaying potential to help make up for the lack of synergy coming from the subclass. First on the list is the absolute staple to any solar build, Wrath of Rasputin. This mod allows our solar splash damage final blows to have a chance to spawn a Warmind cell. This will allow our melee, grenade, and super to generate Warmind cells. Now next up, we have the mod Burning Cells. This augments our Warmind cells to cause enemies hit by the explosion to burn for a short duration. It's a nice way to add some extra kick to our cells, but sadly, as per Destiny 2 weirdness, the burn from these cells does not benefit us in any synergistic way. It's simply a bit of bonus damage. You could change this for Rage of the Warmind, but that's a more expensive mod at 5 energy, where Burning Cells is only 3. The next mod is a bit flexible, but this season I am using Warmind's Decree. This functions almost identically to Wrath of Rasputin, but for void damage instead of solar. I enjoy this mod because the two special grenade launchers that I use most, Deafening Whisper and Truth Teller, both deal void damage, and with this mod, now they can also create Warmind cells. We'll talk about those two weapons more in a moment, but like I said, this is just added Warmind cell generation. So if you find something more useful for you, go for it. Adding another layer to our Warmind cell functionality is a very unique and pretty underused mod, Power of Rasputin. This is a void energy mod that causes any enemy that is simply near a Warmind cell to take 10% increased weapon damage. This will allow our weapons to hit a bit harder and can actually affect things like Anarchy in the background while we damage a boss with our super. It's great for neutral gameplay, and like I said, it makes all of our weapons just hit a little bit harder. And finally, on our class item, you can see that we are using Global Reach, which increases the range of our Warmind cells, but more importantly, we are using the poster child artifact mod from this season, Breach and Clear. I'm sure we're all familiar with this by now, but let's briefly recap it. Whenever we hit a boss or champion or break a shield with a grenade launcher, that target will now take 30% increased damage from all sources for a brief time. It's an absolute top tier mod and will really allow us to take Dawn Chorus to the next level. This is absolutely key to the build. Now, traditionally, you can only have one debuff applied to a target at a time, such as Breach and Clear. However, we get to bend the rules a little bit with Dawn Chorus. Dawn Chorus technically debuffs the target, but only for other Dawnblade projectiles, meaning we can stack Breach and Clear together with the ramping debuff of Dawn Chorus. Also, as a nice bonus, other Warlock's Dawnblades will also benefit from that bonus damage, so it's a neat little synergy if you happen to have other Warlocks playing with you. Now, as is tradition, here is the full list of mods you will need for an exact copy of this build. You're going to need 1 Wrath of Rasputin, 1 Burning Cells or Rage of the Warmind, 1 Warmind's Decree, 1 Power of Rasputin, 1 Global Reach, and 1 Breach and Clear. I like to provide this list to those of you who don't need a full explanation and simply want to plug and play and figure it out as you go. Now let's quickly touch on our weapon loadout of choice here. In our kinetic slot, I am recommending using either 7th Seraph Carbine or 7th Seraph Officer Revolver. These weapons are both capable of generating Warmind cells completely on their own and will aid in flushing out our add clear ability. Both of these can be found either at Banshee 44 or in the World Loot Pool currently. In our energy slot, like I mentioned earlier, I recommend either Deafening Whisper or Truth Teller. Both of these can create Warmind cells when using Warmind's Decree and are also capable of applying Breach and Clear to bosses. Deafening Whisper is great for add clear, while Truth Teller can roll with things like Blinding Nades for added utility. Deafening Whisper can be found in the Wrathborn Hunt from Season of the Hunt, and Truth Teller is found in the World Loot Pool and at Banshee 44. And finally, the staple of any DPS-centric build, Anarchy. We know it, we love it, free passive DPS. This applies Breach and Clear and allows for bonus damage while we nail the boss with our super. It can also be buffed with Power of Rasputin if a Warmind cell happens to be laying nearby. Now flush out the rest of your armor with grenade launcher mods and stat mods and you'll be ready to roll. I would recommend focusing on intellect for extra supers or discipline for more grenades and Warmind cell generation. Now briefly, let's recap what an optimal DPS phase would look like with this build with an example here in the background. You're going to want to shoot 2 Anarchy shots at the boss first. I shoot 1 here because I was conserving ammo for testing, but you'll always shoot 2, and then you'll immediately follow up with a melee attack if possible to start that burn effect on the boss. You'll then toss your grenade at their feet and instantly pop your super. Dump your full super into the boss and voila. That's your full DPS rotation. Now, if you're doing a raid boss or something like that, you might want to change your special weapon of choice for something with a little more sustain, like an Ikelos sniper or first in, last out, if you need more sustained DPS for those longer fights. And of course, if a Warmind cell is present, your weapon damage will be buffed by that additional 10%, thanks to Power of Rasputin. That stacks with everything else in the game. So if you have high energy fire or weapons of light, Power of Rasputin is going to stack on top of that. It's a really nice, super unique type of buff. And that's the build, ladies and gentlemen. Now, of course, this may not be what you want to run in a Grandmaster Nightfall. Well of Radiance or even Chaos Reach can provide much needed functionality in those insanely niche, hardcore in-game modes. But for most anything else, this build is great, well-rounded, and it's a high DPS option for all my Warlocks out there. I really hope you guys enjoy the build and decide to give it a shot. If Bungie would change how burns are classified in the game just a little bit, this build would be on an even higher level. But I digress. Thank you so much for stopping by. You can leave any questions below in the comments, and I'll be sure to reply. Peace.